Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something most people never stop long enough to consider. What if your silence is not a setback, but a strategy? What if the season where nobody sees you is the very season where God is shaping you? We've been taught that visibility equals value, that if you're not seen, you're not significant. But that's not how heaven operates. See, in this world, everyone's rushing to be heard, to be seen, to go viral. But what if true power doesn't come from what you say, but from what you withhold? What if growth, clarity, and breakthrough aren't birthed in the spotlight, but in the silence? What if the next level of your life is not something you have to force, but something that flows naturally when you stop striving and start surrendering? This message is not for those who want attention. It's for those who want alignment. It's for the people who are willing to go deeper when everyone else is going louder. If that's you, if you've been in a quiet season and wondering if God forgot about you, I came to tell you He hasn't. He's preparing something. And the key to unlocking it is staying silent long enough to let it grow. The world we live in constantly demands proof. Proof of success, proof of progress, proof of purpose. We are pushed to announce our wins, to explain our journey, and to defend our calling, especially when it doesn't look like what people expect. Social media thrives on exposure. Culture thrives on validation. And the pressure to be seen often becomes louder than the quiet conviction to just be faithful. But here's the truth: you don't have to prove what God has already approved. When God assigns a mission, He doesn't put it up for a vote. When He places favor on your life, it's not a group decision. Heaven doesn't operate by committee. It moves by covenant. And when you start living from the approval of God instead of the applause of man, everything changes. You stop hustling for validation. You stop explaining your every move. You stop trying to defend a vision that wasn't given to them. It was given to you. The world won't always understand divine timing. People will question your silence. They'll wonder why you haven't spoken up, why you haven't promoted your plans, why you're not shouting your success from the rooftops. But that's because they don't realize when heaven stamps something, the earth will witness it in due time. You don't need to go viral to be valuable. You don't need followers to be favored. God's process is not always public. Sometimes He hides you to heal you. Sometimes He silences you to shape you. What if the silence isn't a punishment but a protection? What if being unseen is exactly what you need in this season? Because when you try to prove too early, you expose what's still maturing. You start showing the blueprint before the foundation is even set. And the danger in that is this: when you let people speak into a vision they didn't receive, they'll always misinterpret it. They'll give advice from a place of assumption, not alignment. They'll try to edit what God authored. When you're secure in what God said, you don't have to explain what others don't understand. You can walk in peace while they speculate. You can stay focused while they question, because approval from God settles debates that no human affirmation ever could. And when you truly know that heaven has authorized your next step, you don't need earth's permission to take it. Think of a tree. When it's planted, no one celebrates it. No one posts it. There's no applause for a seed. But underground, something powerful is happening. Roots are going deep. Systems are forming. Foundations are being laid. That seed doesn't have to prove anything to the world above. It just has to stay planted. And in due season, it breaks through the soil, not because it shouted, but because it grew. You're in a growing season, a maturing season, a becoming season. And the loudest evidence of your progress might not be what you say. It might be what you don't. Silence is not absence. It's alignment. It means you've learned that the anointing doesn't always need announcement. That calling doesn't require a campaign. That purpose just doesn't beg for permission. You don't have to keep explaining your silence to people who weren't part of your process. They didn't hear what you heard. They didn't see what you saw. You owe no apology for obeying a word they didn't receive. And if you keep trying to validate your vision in their language, you'll end up dumbing down what God gave you to fit their vocabulary. Stop shrinking the supernatural just to make it make sense. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. Your job is not to manage their confusion. It's to steward your calling. Because when God's timing meets your obedience, everything they question will answer itself. No billboard needed. No speech necessary. Just fruit. And fruit doesn't lie. Results never need a rebuttal. When God shows up in what you built, what you planted, what you prayed for, people will know. They won't have to be told. They'll see it. That's why you don't have to prove what's already approved. You don't have to defend what's already destined. When heaven stamps your life, your assignment, your season, earth has no choice but to witness it. It might take time. It might require silence. But rest assured, when God says yes, no one else's why matters. The seed never shouts while it's becoming a tree. Silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. Growth happens underground before it shows up on stage. We live in a world that glorifies visibility. If it isn't seen, it must not be real. If it isn't posted, it must not be happening. But the most powerful transformations don't happen in the spotlight. They happen in the soil, quietly, slowly, faithfully. And that's what makes them unshakable. The seed has no Instagram, no audience, no validation. It doesn't get likes for staying buried. But underground, in the hidden place, a miracle is unfolding. Pressure is forming roots. Darkness is shaping depth. Silence is birthing strength. That seed isn't concerned with applause. It's concerned with becoming. It's not in a rush to be seen because it knows something most people forget. You can't produce fruit without going through the dirt first. And many people miss their destiny because they despise their dirt. They don't understand the assignment of obscurity. But the dirt doesn't mean you're buried to die. It means you're planted to grow. That quiet place, that unseen space, it's not a prison, it's preparation. It's the classroom where power is developed, where character is tested, and where foundation is laid. Silence isn't a sign that nothing is happening. It's the space where everything is aligning. In the quiet places, God is doing his deepest work. You're not just being delayed, you're being developed. You're not being overlooked. You're being overshadowed by purpose. And when it's time, that purpose will break through stronger than anything that was built in the noise. See, public victories are built on private victories. The stage is just a reflection of what's been mastered in silence. And that's why so many fall when the lights come on, because they rushed the stage before they were rooted in the soil. They mistook charisma for character, gifting for grounding, exposure for elevation. But true power is patient. It doesn't need a microphone to prove its potential. It doesn't scream for attention. It prepares in quiet so it can stand in public. And when the moment comes, it doesn't have to fake strength. It has the real thing, because it was forged in the fire of stillness. It was matured in the obscurity of process. And it's that process that makes it last. So if you're in a season that feels hidden, if no one's calling your name, if your efforts feel invisible, don't lose heart. You're not behind. You're being built. You're not stuck. You're being shaped. God hides those he loves, not to punish them, but to protect the power he's placing in them. He knows that premature exposure leads to shallow roots, and shallow roots can't hold deep callings. That's why he takes his time. That's why he allows the silence. Because when it's time to step forward, he doesn't want you to depend on applause to keep going. He wants your power to be internal, your strength to be spiritual, your mission to be unshakable. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one making the most noise. It's the one who sat quietly in the back while God developed their discipline, their faith, their clarity, and their confidence. It's the one who didn't need a stage to stay consistent. It's the one who trained in the shadows, who submitted to the slow pace of real growth, and who emerged only when the time was right. So stay planted, stay faithful, stay quiet, not because you're unsure of who you are, but because you're sure of who's forming you. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to be rooted. And when your roots run deep, your fruit will last long. While noise attracts attention, silence attracts instruction. God often speaks the loudest in the quietest moments. If you're talking too much, you might miss the download. In today's culture, silence is almost uncomfortable. The world is addicted to noise, constant movement, endless conversations, nonstop notifications. We've been trained to believe that if it's not loud, it's not important. But that's not how the Spirit moves. God doesn't compete with chaos. He doesn't shout over your distractions. He speaks in whispers, and whispers require stillness. If your life is too loud, your spirit will stay disconnected, because instruction from heaven doesn't flow in the frenzy. It flows in the hush. It comes not in the earthquake, not in the fire, not in the wind, but in the still small voice. That voice doesn't fight for your attention. It waits for your surrender. And that's the danger of constant noise. Not just external volume, but internal noise, overthinking, anxiety, comparison, endless mental chatter. You may be praying for answers, but if you don't create space for silence, how will you hear them? If your mouth is always moving, how will your spirit listen? Too many people are busy asking for guidance, but unwilling to quiet down long enough to receive it. Silence is a posture. It's not just about being quiet on the outside. It's about calming the inside. It's about silencing your doubts, your fears, your desire to control everything. It's about trusting that God has something to say, and it won't always come wrapped in a sermon or a song. Sometimes it's a single word in a moment of stillness that shifts your entire direction. You don't need to manufacture clarity. You need to be available for it. And availability doesn't mean being busy in your spiritual performance. It means learning how to be still and know, not wonder, not worry. No, that kind of knowing comes from intimacy, not activity. And intimacy is always built in silence. That's why Jesus often withdrew to lonely places to pray, not because he needed the crowd, but because he needed the connection, not because he lacked authority, but because he wanted alignment. He understood something we often forget, that silence strengthens a signal, that you hear better when you shut out the noise. That heaven's strategy often downloads in the quiet, not in the commotion. Sometimes the reason we don't have answers isn't because God isn't speaking. It's because we've filled the space with our own voice. We're too busy talking about the problem to receive the solution, too busy explaining our plans to receive his. But when you go quiet, when you still your soul, when you sit in that sacred space, you'll be surprised what flows. Instructions, ideas, conviction, clarity, power. Silence is sacred ground. That's where blueprints from heaven are released. That's where vision is refined. That's where strategy is whispered. If you learn to live in that place, you won't need to chase opportunities. They'll start chasing you, because God doesn't shout his best ideas in crowded rooms. He shares them with the ones who consistently make time to listen. You don't need more noise. You need more presence. And presence is found in stillness. That's where your soul aligns with your spirit. That's where your mind stops racing and your purpose starts rising. That's where the answers you've been begging for finally come, because you stopped trying to perform for them and started listening for them. Don't underestimate the power of going quiet. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not inactivity, it's receptivity. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do isn't shout or sing or preach. It's to sit, listen, receive. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. Don't confuse activity with productivity. The loudest room isn't always the most effective. Learn to war in stillness. When you're still, heaven fights for you. There's a difference between moving and advancing. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're building. Just because you're loud doesn't mean you're powerful. In a world that celebrates constant motion, we've confused chaos with momentum. But motion without meaning is just noise. And noise, if you're not careful, will make you feel effective while keeping you empty. We've been taught that louder is stronger, faster is better, and more is proof. So we pack our calendars, fill our schedules, stack our obligations, and then wonder why we're still spiritually tired, emotionally drained, and mentally scattered. But that's because we've been operating in noise, not in authority. True authority isn't noisy, it's steady. It's focused, it's quiet confidence rooted in divine clarity. Stillness is not laziness. It's not passivity. It's not doing nothing. Stillness is strategic surrender. It's the ability to sit, to pause, to breathe, and to trust that just because you're not fighting in the flesh doesn't mean the battle isn't being won in the spirit. Stillness is faith in motion. It's when your lack of movement becomes an act of obedience because you trust that heaven moves when you stop striving. There are battles that were never meant to be fought with your mouth or your hands. They were meant to be fought with your trust, with your stillness, with your refusal to panic, perform, or prove. Because when you're still, God can step in. When you're still, you stop blocking divine intervention with human interference. Think about the children of Israel standing at the edge of the Red Sea, surrounded by threats, boxed in by impossibility. They were ready to panic, ready to run, ready to do something. But God didn't say, fight. He said, be still. He said, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. That wasn't weakness, it was warfare. Stillness was their strategy. And in that stillness, the sea split, the enemy drowned, and a nation walked through. The enemy wants to distract you with noise, internal and external, because noise breaks your focus. It clouds your discernment. It keeps you reactive instead of reflective. If you stay distracted, you'll miss divine downloads. If you stay loud, you'll miss quiet instructions that were meant to shift your whole direction. That's why you must learn to war differently, not always with a sword, but sometimes with silence. Not always by charging ahead, but by standing your ground. Not always by doing more, but by trusting deeper. Stillness is what allows your faith to mature. It's what turns panic into peace. It's what gives heaven the legal access to move on your behalf. You don't have to announce every move, respond to every critic, or post every step. Some of the most dangerous people in the kingdom are the ones who know how to move in silence, obey in stillness, and trust in the dark. They don't need noise to feel strong. They don't need crowds to feel validated. They know that quiet obedience will bring public victory. So the next time you feel like you're not doing enough because you're not busy enough, ask yourself, am I being productive or am I just performing? Real power doesn't need to perform. It rests, it listens, it waits. And when the time comes, it moves, but not from panic, from precision, because it was sharpened in stillness first. Don't let the world trick you into thinking your stillness is stagnation. No, your stillness is your strategy. While others run in circles, you're being refined. While others chase validation, you're growing roots. And while others make noise, heaven is preparing to make moves for you. Stand still, stay steady, stay focused, because when you stop fighting to be seen, heaven steps in to be heard. And when heaven moves, no enemy can stand. You don't need to broadcast your process. Just stay consistent in the dark. Eventually, your results will make the announcement your mouth never had to. We live in a time where everyone wants to show their journey before they've reached the destination. People are more obsessed with documenting the grind than actually doing the work. But purpose doesn't need a press release. Destiny doesn't need a documentary. When you're truly called, you don't chase attention, you chase alignment. And when you're aligned with what God assigned, the fruit will eventually speak for itself. See, immature potential screams for recognition. But mature power knows how to stay quiet, rooted, and faithful. You don't have to announce every step of your process to prove you're growing. You just need to keep showing up, keep planting, keep watering, and let time and consistency do what your words never could. Because fruit can't lie. Results can't be debated. When you really walk in obedience, when you honor the quiet grind, when you stay in position even when it's uncomfortable, God has a way of elevating you in front of the very people who questioned your silence. But here's the thing, by the time the fruit shows up, you won't even need to explain. They'll see it, they'll feel it, they'll know. And the most powerful people in the room are the ones who let the evidence speak louder than their ego. They've learned how to work without whining, build without broadcasting, and grow without needing a crowd. They don't spend their energy convincing people. They spend their energy becoming who God called them to be. There's something divine about quiet consistency. That's where the real power lies. Because when you stay steady in silence, you're not just building success, you're building substance. You're creating a version of yourself that doesn't rise and fall with opinions. You're becoming someone who is grounded in mission, not motivated by mention. The tree doesn't yell about its branches. The tree doesn't preach about its roots. It just grows, and one day the fruit shows up. And when it does, no one asks, did that tree grow? They just eat, they just receive, they just recognize. That's the same way God wants your life to operate. Silent growth, loud impact. You don't have to defend your process when your fruit is undeniable. Let people wonder. Let them speculate. Let them gossip if they must. Your job is not to prove anything in the early stages. Your job is to be faithful to what God gave you. Your job is to stay planted even when the soil feels dry. Your job is to honor the slow seasons, the silent seasons, the lonely seasons, because those are the seasons where real roots go deep. And when your roots are deep, storms can't shake you. Critics can't distract you. Delays can't discourage you. Why? Because you're not moved by surface level affirmation. You're moved by internal conviction. You know what you're carrying. You know what you're building. And you know that when the time is right, your fruit will say everything you never had to. The reason most people stay stuck is because they're trying to talk their way into places that only obedience can open. They want influence before impact, but the kingdom doesn't work that way. God promotes the faithful, not the flashy. He rewards the consistent, not just the charismatic. If you stay faithful in the quiet, He'll make sure your fruit gets seen in the open. So let your fruit talk. Let your results preach. Let your transformation be the testimony. The real ones won't need an explanation, and the ones who still don't get it, they were never meant to follow your journey in the first place. You're not called to impress, you're called to impact. And impact starts in silence. It grows in private, it develops in the dark. But when it shows up, it doesn't need a microphone. It just shows, and that's the loudest statement of all. Silence protects what isn't ready yet. If you speak too soon, you invite battles you're not built for. Stay silent until God says, now. That's when grace meets momentum. There is a sacred power in patience, especially in a world that idolizes speed. Everyone wants to be first to go viral, to announce their next big thing before it's fully formed. But what if your delay is not a denial? It's divine protection. What if silence isn't withholding? It's wisdom. There's a reason God often conceals greatness before he reveals it. Not everything that's planted is ready to be presented. Premature exposure invites unnecessary warfare. If you open your mouth before your foundation is firm, you won't have the strength to carry the weight of what comes next. When you speak too soon, you give the enemy a blueprint. You give critics ammunition. You awaken enemies that your current level of maturity cannot withstand. Not because you're not anointed, but because the assignment needs time to solidify on the inside before it can stand on the outside. Think of how many dreams have been crushed not because they weren't real, but because they were revealed too early. Vision must be developed before it's displayed. Timing isn't just about opportunity, it's about readiness. And readiness isn't just external, it's spiritual, mental, emotional. It's about being able to handle the influence without it corrupting the mission. It's about being prepared for the pressure that comes with the platform. The silence isn't a punishment. It's a sanctuary. It's where God refines your character so that your calling doesn't become your downfall. It's where he teaches you discipline, discernment, and devotion, not for the stage, but for the storm. Because storms don't care about your title. They care about your depth. And that depth is only formed in the hidden place. That's why God often keeps your breakthrough quiet while it's growing. He's shielding it, developing it. And if you try to force it open before the seal of heaven is released, you'll step out with gifting, but without grace. And gifting without grace is a setup for burnout, breakdown, or backlash. Don't rush what God is still writing. He's not slow, he's strategic. When he finally says, now, doors swing open with no striving. When the timing is divine, things align effortlessly. Grace goes before you. Favor follows you. The pace is peaceful, not pressure. That's how you know it's him. God's no doesn't exhaust, it accelerates. But acceleration only comes after alignment, and alignment only comes through obedience in silence. It's your willingness to stay hidden that qualifies you for what will be revealed. It's your ability to wait without complaining, to work without announcing, to believe without broadcasting. That's what heaven rewards. The world may try to shame you for being quiet. They may wonder why you haven't blown up yet, why you're not making moves. But don't let their clock rush your calling. They didn't assign you, so they don't get to time you. Only God knows when the fruit is ripe. And when it is, it will not need a push. It will drop naturally, and everyone will know it was time. So if you feel the pressure to post, to prove, to pronounce, pause. Ask yourself, is this the release, or is this my restlessness talking? Because when God says, now, you won't need to force it. The wind will be at your back. The room will be ready. The doors will be open. The weight won't feel heavy, and the momentum will carry you in ways your effort never could. Let the silence stretch you. Let it train you. Let it cover what God is crafting. Don't be afraid to be unseen for a season, because when the divine timing hits, no one will be able to deny what you carry. Your obedience in the dark will become your strength in the light. And you'll know it was worth the wait, not just because of where you arrived, but because of who you became on the way. So stay silent. Stay planted. Stay faithful in the shadows where the world can't see. But heaven is watching. You don't have to rush. You don't have to prove. You don't have to explain a process that God is still perfecting. Let the silence stretch your roots deep, because what's coming will require the kind of strength that can't be faked or rushed. In a culture obsessed with noise, be the one who chooses stillness. In a generation chasing platforms, be the one building quietly on purpose. Because when it's time, really time, your life will speak louder than any announcement ever could. The fruit will talk. The timing will confirm. And the silence you once wrestled with will become the soundtrack of your greatest elevation. Let your stillness be your strategy. Let your obedience be your offering. And let God write the part that only he can reveal. In his time, his way, for his glory.